Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Monday afternoon. I want to first thank you for being here with me this afternoon, and I also want to say thank you to those who attended last week's town hall meetings at Saracoso, Porterville, and Bakersfield College. For those at the district office, we're working on logistics, so we'll soon be scheduling the next round of town hall meetings at the district office. So if your DO staff hang in there, we're getting that scheduled. I'll be following up on all of the input from the latest town hall meetings. And as a reminder, I'll be back out and about in the district for more town hall meetings in probably late March or early April. So again, thank you for joining me today. Before we get too much further, I want to address a question that I didn't get to address last time. So with me to my left is a dinosaur, and someone pointed out that I had a dinosaur back behind me, and they were wondering the story behind the dinosaur. So I have the dinosaur, which is a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, and then Jeff Goldblum. So the very quick story behind this is to answer that question. When I was teaching my president's leadership class as a campus president, my class came back after the weekend. I had some students who saw Jurassic Park, the original from 1993, for the first time. And so one of them were like, "Oh my God, you look like Jeff Goldblum." And so it started this whole Jurassic Park thing in the class. So my students brought me the Jeff Goldblum figure, the T-Rex. I have the little Jurassic Park Jeeps there as well. So I have a full sort of Jurassic Park playset. So answering that question about why I have a person and a dinosaur next to one another, that's the reason why. It's to pay homage to my students and the fact that I was so proud that when the class was over, they could each recite. When I looked at them and said Jeff Goldblum, they would all say, "Life finds a way." So with that, we'll transition from life finding a way in Jurassic Park to tomorrow, a very important day in our country, Election Day. And I just remind all of you, remember to exercise your right as an American to vote. And we know that community college students are the future, but you may or may not know this, community college students vote at a rate nearly 10% less than their peers at four-year institutions. So 4 years ago, for example, turnout for voters who were ages 18 to 25 was only 51.4%. So please remind everyone, faculty, staff, managers, students, that exercising our right to vote is an incumbent part of our democracy. And as Franklin Delano Roosevelt reminds us, ladies and gentlemen, democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is education. I wanted to talk about the Empowering Potential campaign that I started in September, and just a couple things about that campaign. So you may remember at my last webinar, I introduced the concept of empowering potential, or an effort that I wanted to personally oversee that was designed to unlock the potential of each member of our campus communities through actionable change across four core areas. And just to remind you of those four core areas, they are access, opportunity, success, and hope. And so over the last several months, I've absorbed your feedback on how we can work together to make the Kern CCD the best place to work, and the Empowering Potential Initiative to empower the maximum potential of our students. And this initiative is not only a way to hold ourselves accountable to drive meaningful change, but to also foster a culture, an embedded culture of continuous performance improvement. So during the town hall meetings last week, I recently shared one area where I wanted to empower potential, and I want to reiterate that today in case you missed the town hall meetings. And that's through the creation of a new office at the district office. And so I'm advocating that we create the Ombudsperson office. So you may recall recently, Dr. Trudy Gerald, the Vice Chancellor for Workforce Education, retired. And so I've been thinking through, what do we do with that position? As I've thought about it, I've looked at our district and I've looked at how I believe an Ombudsperson office can help. This is something that I'm going to socialize more with our college communities, our district office staff, and obviously the Board of Trustees as we work on budget preparations for the 25-26 budget. So if you're not familiar with what's called an ombudsperson office, it kind of arose from a term called the ombudsman office. In 2024, I would suggest that ombudsman is a little bit of an archaic term, and it's really more appropriate to talk about ombudsperson, meaning that job could be held by male or female. So looking at the qualifications of somebody in this role, typically it's an individual who holds a Juris Doctorate or a law degree. Many times they're trained and have credentials in arbitration, mediation, conflict resolution. One of the jobs of the ombudsperson office is to be an independent, non-biased voice where if you're an employee, you have a dispute with a colleague or a supervisor or someone in the chain of command, you can approach the ombudsperson office confidentially, knowing that there's no bias, and have that office resolve complaints in a level 1 situation. Now, we know that there are other complaints that may rise above that, but as I've said to you in other webinars, I believe that we should be resolving conflict at the lowest common denominator or the lowest possible level. So the office of the ombudsperson gives us the opportunity to help expedite conflict. And I want to be very clear, to help expedite conflict resolution, I should say. We don't want them expediting conflict. So I do want to say that this doesn't replace human resources. It's not an indication that human resources isn't doing the job. It's just that we're a large district. We resolve a lot of grievances, and sometimes there's so many, it's hard to resolve those expeditiously. The Office of the Ombuds reports directly to the Chancellor's office. So again, it's non-biased, it's focused on conflict resolution, it's focused on de-escalation. Its job is to help resolve conflict. Some of the other things that an ombuds office also engages in is conflict resolution, teaching de-escalation techniques, teaching professional development, helping all of us to become a more collegial, empowering community. Another thing this office does that I think is very powerful is, let's say hypothetically, at the end of the first year this office is in existence, they produce a report. I can look at that report and say, hypothetically again, that office resolved 17 grievances. So we might look at those grievances and say, what are some common denominators? It could be that there's some common denominators that result around training or professional development. There could be some common denominators focused on systemic issues. So the ombudsman office or ombudsperson office helps us look at our own internal processes and decide how to be most efficient and effective in resolving conflict. And well, conflict is inevitable. You've heard me say before, it's the way that we together manage conflict that matters most. And so I think employing the office of the ombudsperson will help us moving forward. I would envision that this office would begin on or around July 1st, 2025. I do intend to take this through our participatory governance process. So you're hearing kind of a precursor, if you will, about what I think this position can do to help our district. And I remind everybody, as I did last week at the town hall meetings, the district office is a service-based organization. The office of the ombudsperson follows that same spirit and intent of being a customer-centric focus of operation at the district office. So there will be much more to come about that in the future, but I just wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to hear about that directly from me. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the California Renewable Energy Laboratory. As you may know, last Friday, we had a press conference at the district office announcing the new managing director of the California Renewable Energy Lab, or CREL. So I'm really proud to announce to everybody today that Dr. Ellen Morris is now the managing director of CREL. Dr. Morris, if you've heard her name before, recently transitioned from the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, where she was the Director of Renewable Energy Partnerships for universities. She's done a phenomenal job over the decades working with colleges and universities internationally. We met with representatives from NREL last week. They're very excited about the renewed partnership between CREL and NREL. And so I wanted to make sure that our campus communities knew that Dr. Morris was here. Some of the things she'll be focusing on is obviously clean energy, carbon reduction, but I wanted to take just a moment and talk about an initiative that I spoke about before, and that is, of course, hydrogen. Just to remind everybody, in the next 10 years, United States Department of Energy forecasts almost 700,000 new high-paying jobs directly related to hydrogen fuel cell technology. As a Kern Community College District in an area whose economy is transitioning, it's in our best interest to land some of those great paying jobs. Because remember, 700,000 jobs are going to go somewhere in the United States. So my first question is, why shouldn't those jobs go here in Kern County, in the surrounding area, building on the concept of regional economic development? So one of the things that we'll be focused on in C-Rail, in addition to microgrids, clean energy, carbon capturing, clean carbon reduction techniques, we're going to be focusing on hydrogen fuel cell technology and what the future looks like for hydrogen fuel cells. So much more to come on that, but I want to make sure that our campus communities were aware of Dr. Morris's recent appointment. And as we transition towards the holidays, I want to pause for a moment because this is a time of thanks. This is a time that many of us enjoy time with families, time to gather with friends, and maybe, ladies and gentlemen, time to reflect on the past year, our lives, our work experience, our history at our jobs, the people we've helped. I want to tell you about a situation that occurred in late summer in our service district area. You probably heard about the Burrell fire. So in a little over 24 hours, what you may not know is this fire scorched almost 60,000 acres, left hundreds, if not thousands of people homeless, and completely destroyed the town of Havilah. So think about it for a moment. The history of this town, the history of these homes, completely 100% erased. And you may not know this, many of the residents in that area, talking to the East Kern United Way, many of the residents in that area didn't have homeowners insurance, quite frankly, because they just couldn't afford the premiums. Many of them lost everything. They lost their homes, they lost their belongings. So today I'm announcing, just before the holidays, a time for you and I to work together to help support the families, the victims of the Burrell fire. So we'll put a link up in a moment in the chat window so you can see that. We'll also send out a couple emails in the very near future about this relief effort. One of the things that I intend to do is to take a team of individuals over to the Lake Isabella, Kernville area and hand these gift cards out to these family members, because I want them to know who we are. I want them to know that the Kern Community College District is behind them. We will do whatever we can do, not because they're in our service area. Certainly that's important, but because as humans, that's the right thing to do. In times of need and times of crisis, it matters how we come together to help others. So I hope you'll join me in supporting donating funds for gift cards, because simple little things we may not think about all the time, buying food for children, diapers, things we may now are at a point in our life we can take for granted. Many individuals there in the Burrell area still can't do that. So again, we'll send out some other emails, but I hope that you will join with me in trying to help our neighbors just to the east of the Bakersfield area. Before we close and talk about your questions, just a couple other things that I want you to know. Our commitment to using virtual reality is coming to a very quick level of achievement. So you may be aware that recently Dr. Jasmeet Baines, who's an assemblywoman in the Bakersfield area, contributed $1 million to the Kern Community College District. We've taken this $1 million. We're getting ready to build what's called a mobile economic development and education laboratory. So this mobile laboratory will be the first of its kind in the nation, using not just virtual reality, but augmented virtual reality. So to give you a little bit more background, we're working with a company in Culver City called Dreamscapes Learn. I encourage you to go out and look at Dreamscapes Learn website, because what they're doing is nothing short of amazing. Dreamscapes has a strategic partnership with Arizona State University, where now Arizona State runs all of their general biology students and their general biology 1 and 2 students for science majors through this virtual reality-based lab, which is based upon an alien zoo. So students engage in virtual reality sessions where they have real life experiments. They work with team members to help individuals that are in distress or animals that are in distress. So the really cool thing about this is that it not only helps us learn anatomy and physiology, it helps some other social concepts as well about working together, resolving conflict, resolving crises, helping save animals in this alien zoo. So Arizona State implemented this about 5 years ago because, like us, they were concerned with student success rate in general biology and biology 1 and 2. You may know, particularly if you teach in the natural or physical sciences, students succeed typically at a rate less than 50% per course schedule. So if we can raise that number, which by the way, at Arizona State, they've raised that more than 15 percentage points since they've started the alien biology zoo concept, we will have a mobile lab to begin with, because a mobile lab will allow us to take it to our 3 colleges, to our high schools in our district, to our early college programs. This is sort of the first phase of this new virtual augmented reality. And when you see this, you will absolutely be blown away. One of the things that this does is not only uses virtual reality headgear, but it also uses haptic feedback as well. So in this virtual reality learning laboratory, there's 16 seats. Each seat has motion with it. The chair moves, there's air that blows on you. So it simulates this sort of alien zoo biology where you're deeply immersed in your experiments. So I think looking at virtual reality for the future, the Mobility Lab will be, again, the first of its kind in the United States using Dreamscape's Learn virtual reality software. So we're working on that right now. That will be ready, hopefully, to roll out before July 1st of 2025. We'll have a great opportunity for you to experience the power of virtual reality in the Economic Mobility Lab in the very near future. But I wanted you to know that innovation is more than just words to me. Innovation is looking at the future of jobs, looking at how we adapt artificial intelligence into our curriculum, how we use virtual and augmented reality in our curriculum, not to gamify things, but to enhance the student learning experience, to firsthand help our students to learn in an immersive environment using virtual reality where they can work as team members, again, to solve problems. I encourage you, go out and look at Dreamscape's Learn website. You can Google Arizona State University Dreamscapes Lab. You'll find some really, really cool information out there. And it's not just for 18 to 24-year-olds. So if you're Gen X like me or you're a baby boomer, this is reality that all of us can utilize on a daily basis. It's something that can help everyone from every living generation learn. So I'm really excited about that opportunity, and I'll keep you posted on its developments. I want to close with one last example of broad scale collaboration. So recently, we wrote a grant, meaning the Kern Community College District wrote a grant with some economic development organizations here in Bakersfield, B3K, the County of Kern, the City of Bakersfield, the Kern Economic Development Corporation. First time all of these entities came together to write a grant. So we wrote a $5 million Economic Development Administration grant to kind of scale up and build some incubators that will help accelerate the growth of aerospace and defense related industries. I want to say a very special thank you to Benita and Bobby, because without their help, 100%, we would not have gotten this done. This was a very heavy lift with 5 different entities. I'm sorry, the other partner that I should also mention is California State University, Bakersfield. So us, our 4-year university partner, all of the other economic development organizations in Bakersfield and Greater Kern County collaborated on projects that will help our regional economy grow. And again, I just want to say thank you to Benita and Bobby, because we decided to do this, we, meaning all the partners, at the very last minute. Kern, of course, as we do and always should, took the lead. Benita and Bobby led the team through all the work that needed to happen. And again, in a matter of days, we submitted a very competitive grant that I know will have great opportunity to be funded. So Benita and Bobby, if you're watching, if you're listening, on behalf of my office, thank you for your tireless efforts. Thank you for the work that you did. Again, team, it just reminds us that together we can do great things. We can do great things with external partners as well. So I really look forward to updating you when we hear about this grant. So I want to transition and make sure that we have plenty of time, as always, to answer your questions. I'm looking at the questions that are in the question box already. There's a question about, do we have ballot drop-off boxes on the campuses? I will say that is a great question. I'm not sure of the answer. Number one, I hope that we do. To our campus communities who are listening, if you would please let your campus constituents know if you have a drop-off box on your campus for ballots, that would be fantastic. Again, remember, we engage as people in a democracy. We work together to better our democracy. Our voices matter, and most important, ladies and gentlemen, your voices matter. The next question is, when would the Ombudsman Office come online? So to kind of reiterate what I talked about earlier is, I would say on or around July 1st, 2025. Obviously, we would need to launch a comprehensive, extensive search for that position. We would need to get it established. So I would say first quarter of our next fiscal year, so on or around July 2025. But again, I want to make sure that we go through our participatory governance process, and I fully explain this to our committees, Consultation Council, Chancellor's Cabinet, District-wide Budget Committee, obviously appropriate Board of Trustees subcommittees, and then the ultimate decision, of course, would be the Board of Trustees when they contemplate the 2025-2026 budget. But again, if all that goes according to the plan I've outlaid, we're talking about somewhere around July 1st of 2025. The next question is, thank you for this informational webinar. What are your thoughts on recent management departures from BC College and the process of filling vacant director and program manager positions? Specifically, how quickly are you aiming to fill these roles? So a couple different comments about that. As you may know, at BC, we have a particularly large group of managers that comprise the category of program manager and director. These positions are vital to our campus operations at not only BC, but PC and Saracoso as well. I would say from my perspective, the positions need to be filled as quickly as possible. I know Human Resources is working with the on-campus human resource personnel to ensure those positions are being posted expeditiously and they're being filled expeditiously. The longer we leave these critical positions open, the more difficult it is to get someone in, get them up to speed. Obviously, in the interim, we're faced with a situation of parsing out work, which we all know is not ideal. And so anytime we have openings at any level in this district, regardless of it's the office of the chancellor, all the way through all of our other administrative ranks, we should always practice expeditious hiring. We should always be efficient and effective in our hiring processes and practices. So I would say that if it's not moving along, to let your HR representative know. We're committed to making sure that people get hired expeditiously. I'll remind you, a couple moments ago, we talked about the holiday season. It's kind of scary to think that it's already November, right? I mean, just the 8 months that I've been here have gone by so quickly. We need to make sure that these processes are working before we leave for the holiday break, which, believe it or not, is about 6 weeks away, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to make sure that we get things wrapped up to the extent we can prior to the holidays, and to make sure that these processes can continue. So that way we come back in January, we can either finalize them, we can interview great candidates. I'm really impressed, by the way, as I look about the district and see all the wonderful hires you have made recently. I think we've got some amazing additions to our team. We, meaning all of us, I would think, want to look forward to ensuring that we continue to expedite new team members coming on board as soon as expeditiously as possible. I see a note on here that says the BC campus drop-off ballot box is located in front of the Welcome Center by the P1 entrance on Haley Street. So thank you for that information. Again, the BC campus drop-off ballot box in front of the Welcome Center by parking 1 entrance right next to Haley Street. I really appreciate the person who answered that question. So the next question is that I will read to you. What is Kern District's office plan on getting professionals in growing fields that may not already be located within Kern County, i.e. RN professors, energy professors, etc.? Will they be recruiting people from out of state to come here, or providing training for their employees. So I would say, quite frankly, both. Recently, just a few minutes ago, I mentioned to everybody on the webinar that the U.S. Department of Energy forecasted about 700,000 new jobs directly related to hydrogen fuel cell technology. One of the challenges you have in an emerging job market or ecosystem is the fact that there's not a lot of people that are around that have great training and years of experiences. As many of you know, in many fields, particularly career and technical education related fields, we tend to look for individuals who have relevant experience in the field, because the person who did that job, who mastered that process for 10, 15, 20 years or more, is probably one of the best teachers of that craft, one of the best people to share their passion and that skill for others. So I would say that we really need to do two things. We need to work on upskilling people that are here now, and I believe we'll need to strategically find individuals that can be champions, is a word I use frequently, or advocates is another word that I use frequently, both champions and advocates of high-paying new jobs. And I'll remind you, we talk a lot about disinvested communities. Have you ever heard that comment? People will say, well, there's all these disinvested communities out there. Across the United States in Kern County, certainly we have communities that are typically, quote unquote, disinvested. I will say to you from me, I'm not using the term disinvested. I'm using the term reinvested, because doesn't it make sense that we should be reinvesting in our communities? It's sort of like that Captain Obvious statement to say, well, these communities have been disinvested. Okay, that means historically, yes, we should be acutely aware these communities have been disinvested. But team, that doesn't answer the question moving forward. What are we going to do about it? And so I've chosen to focus on the reinvestment in our communities and ensuring that they have access to the resources we offer, the workforce development opportunities we offer, the regional economic development activities we're undertaking. All of that, again, is to build a reinvested economy. So thank you for your question about sourcing great experts who are passionate about their field. Again, I see two different paths there. One path is, again, upskilling people we have here, but I don't think there's any way we could not bring in people from outside of our area, particularly in emerging fields like hydrogen fuel cell technology. So thank you again. When I look at the next comment, we have a full-time energy professor at Bakersfield College. Absolutely correct. We do have a full-time energy professor at BC. So I would envision moving forward, right, having conversations with our energy professor, CREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, as I talked about earlier, to coalesce all these resources and figure out exactly what we should be focusing on. Folks, there's a myriad of things, as you probably know, in renewable energy fields, things like EVs, electric vehicles, things like microgrid technology, carbon capture, which, by the way, you may or may not know, recently the Kern County Board of Supervisors approved the CRC Corporation's Carbon Vault Technology project, which is the first one of its kind in our state. And that is so important for carbon capture and the jobs that will come along with that. So this industry, meaning the clean renewable fuel industry, is already underway in our county. What I don't want us to do is miss out on the opportunity for new high-paying jobs right here in Kern County. Again, thank you for the question. The next question is, recently you said that you want to promote internally and grow our own. At BC, the majority of the VP, director, and management openings recently have been filled by external candidates. How can you keep people motivated when they're being shown that being an internal candidate is a hindrance? That's a really good question. So the balance between being an internal candidate and an external candidate can be really hard sometimes. And so I would say this, one of the things that I've talked to our California State Employees Association, or CSEA, about is doing some targeted work on growing our own. The one thing I would mention for everyone watching and listening is we need to practice something called succession planning. And again, that's not a negative statement about who we are or where we've been. Succession planning means we look at positions and say, well, what if we have an opening here? Whether earlier we talked about program managers, right? And the need to expeditiously fill those positions, whether it's a program manager, a dean, a director, a vice president, a vice chancellor, a chancellor, how are we engaging in appropriate succession planning? So I would say to the person who asked that question, a few different things. One, we need to look at succession planning for our jobs throughout the district. Two, we need to look at if there is a void in the talent, knowledge, skills, and abilities on internal candidates versus external candidates. Again, what can we do to help? You heard me use the word earlier, upskill. What can we do to upskill our current workforce to give them more competitive opportunities? I absolutely believe, and I'll say it again, it's important for us to grow our own in many situations. Sometimes it's hard to recruit people to a certain area. As a former economic developer, I always told people that it was infinitely easier to retain the businesses that we already had, as opposed to going out and trying to recruit dozens and dozens of new business. The reason for that is that people who own a business already made an investment, right? And to that person's question, you, if you're an employee, you're an incumbent worker at the current CCD, you've already made an investment in this district. So we should be working together to find other ways to make that investment. Just like I'm actively engaged in teaching in the Supervisory Leadership Institute, as I said to you on previous webinars, I'll be actively engaged in teaching, leading discussions, leading thoughtful dialogue about how we can continue to upskill our workforce. That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking that. The next question is, are there plans for HR to offer more hiring committee trainings in the near future? The answer to that question is yes. We need to ensure, in fact, I think there's been emails that we've talked about that we are working on having more opportunities to engage people in professional development for hiring committees. So if that is not being done to the extent possible, then we will need to look at that. It's incredibly important to ensure that our people who sit on hiring committees have obviously been through the right training, the right professional development to ensure at the end, what are we after? The best candidate, but I would also remind you, the best fit for our district. In other words, the person who has the right motivation, the person who has the right passion, the person who believes in empowering the potential of our students. So training our committees or engaging in professional development, incredibly important. If we need to do more of that, you just need to let me know. Again, I believe HR has already started that process. I've seen emails that have gone out about training, but if there are some gaps, by all means, please let me know. Thank you for your question. The next question is, what is currently being done on the loss of the premium cash back for our insurance? Money has already been tight, and I don't think the union negotiations have been keeping up with inflation and what's being paid at other districts. So I answered this question at the town hall meetings. I'll also answer it here. I'm going to make a couple presumptions for a second based upon this question. I'm going to guess this is more of a CSEA related question. Here's what I can say. I'm actively engaged, as is HR and Vice Chancellor Ali and others, in trying to figure out what we're going to do to ameliorate this situation. I'm working on some things. HR is, CSEA is. I've talked to our CSEA representatives at all three of our campuses. I'll also be meeting with our CSEA leadership in the very near future to see what we can do about this expeditiously. I understand that I mentioned earlier, right? The holiday season is on us. So there's some extra impetus to make sure that we get this resolved quickly and expediently. So I appreciate you asking the question here to reiterate again what I've talked about in our on-campus forums, that number one, not only am I aware, but number two, I'm engaged with all parties, all constituents to figure out what we need to do in the short term and then figure out what the best solution for the long term is. I will obviously keep everyone apprised of this as we move forward because we don't have weeks. We have days to figure out the best resolution to this. So again, I appreciate the person asking that question. The next question is, how can we get support to be able to grow within a department that doesn't have any positions between classified and manager of the department, especially at the smaller institutions? We have lesser students, but the volume of work is the same. One of the things that I would say is growing a department as far as the collegiate budget processes go. So as you probably know, we're getting ready to start a lot of major heavy lifting on the 25-26 budget. I think it's important that this information is included as the departments, in this case, your department specifically, builds its budget. And one of the things I would say is the explanation of why a position is needed is always helpful. So for example, earlier you heard me elucidate the reasons about why I think an ombud's office is important, why it will help our district as a whole, why it will help resolve complaints or grievances at the lowest common denominator, why it will help engage in professional development, why it will help engage in reporting back to leadership about issues that we have so we can be proactive in addressing those in the future. I would use the same sort of connotation or template for a position to spell out explicitly, why do you need that position? Because one of the things that we do here exceptionally well is serve our students. But if there's more work going on and it's becoming more difficult to serve students, then I would suggest just laying out a very cogent plan of why the position needs to be filled. Not necessarily a compendium of all the duties and responsibilities. That's important. But I think more importantly, behind any ideology is saying, why do I believe this is important? Why do I think that this will help students? And why do I think this will lead to better outcomes for our students? So I would suggest keeping that student focus and again, explaining why that position is important to your college and quite frankly, to the question that was asked, regardless of the size of institution, because again, we have to ensure that we're providing the same level of service to every student, whether it is in Mammoth Lakes, all the way through Bakersfield to the new soon to be opened Arvin Center and beyond. So thank you for the question again. I would frame it from the perspective of answering why is this important and what is it going to do to help promote student success? The next question is, there's been much discussion on the BC campus regarding growth. We continue to grow in advisors that recruit new students, which result in FTES. However, we do not grow staff to support processing all the work, which results in overtime, burnout, and work done in haste. How will this be resolved? So let's talk about that pipeline of recruitment, if you will. So obviously, it's important to get students through the beginning of the funnel. The more students we get in the beginning of the funnel, obviously, we would all agree, the better. However, I would also suggest that once we get the students in the funnel, which to this person's point, we're doing a phenomenal job of getting students in the funnel, we have to ensure that all of the wraparound services that we have are staffed adequately to provide those services. So I would say two things. Retention and completion are just as important, if not more important, than enrolling students at the front end. Remember, the Student-Centered Funding Formula, or SCIF, also rewards us for students being retained and students graduating timely. So as a district, we've got to look very thoughtfully at how post-recruitment, once a student enters, again, this wide funnel in the pipeline, what we don't want to do is lose students throughout that pipeline so it narrows so much that we're losing too many students through the process. You might recall that in my first webinar months ago, I talked about the number of students who earned 0 units in their first semester. That's a really large number for us. It was over 4,000 students in our district that enrolled in a course, but never completed a course with us. So if you use that as a number, you can safely say it's probably larger today than it was then. And so to the point, the question that was asked, how do we ensure we have people to follow up with students? How do we ensure that our processes are perfected so we can serve the maximum number of students? So I would say, moving forward, thoughts about how we process applications more expeditiously and efficiently, how we ensure that all of our wraparound services, when I say wraparound services, I really mean things like financial aid, A&R, academic advisors, counselors, I mean, all the things that aid a student towards successful completion. We need to make sure that that system is functioning as seamlessly as possible. So any ideas that you have about how do we ensure we have the right number of people helping is always greatly appreciated. And as I say in every webinar, every town hall meeting, you can email me, you can follow up with me. I've already followed up with several individuals who had emailed me after the town hall meeting. So thank you for your input and your questions as well. The next question is, anything you can share as to what happened to the CFO and what changes are ahead. So at this juncture, I can simply say that it's a personnel matter, that it is a confidential matter. And at this juncture, we're moving forward with Melissa Thornsberry as the Associate Vice Chancellor, now the acting CFO. Melissa's contract is through June 30th, 2025. So at that time, we will launch a nationwide search for our new CFO. Processes moving forward, I want to touch on that very briefly. So at the last round of town hall meetings, I heard a few messages loud and clear, but two messages really clear. So messages about the purchasing process and the expediency thereof, and concerns about the contracting processes. In other words, departments that are working directly with vendors. By the way, many of our vendors are local small businesses who we need to ensure that we're being the best possible business partner for those businesses. So I've asked Melissa Thornsberry as acting CFO to work with me on scheduling some smaller town hall meetings before the end of fall semester, where Melissa will go out to our campuses and have some meetings with individuals. So she, as the acting CFO, can hear more examples of what's not working, what is working, what do we need to fix that's not working? And are there maybe things that we're not doing that we could do to help that process? So I would say from a business and fiscal services standpoint, I've been very clear. I've asked Melissa to engage our campus community. So you will see information come out in the very near future. So if you're involved in contracts with vendors, big or small, doesn't matter. If you're involved in the purchasing, requisitioning process, we'll be announcing probably like one town hall meeting on each campus. As you all know, I do 3 town hall meetings because I bifurcate faculty, management, and classified. This really isn't that same kind of approach. This is saying that if you have concerns about purchasing, contracts with vendors, and again, to underscore all the small vendors that we work with as a college district, we just want to make sure that we're paying people expeditiously for the work that they perform on our behalf. So in answer to that question, you're going to see changes coming very quickly as Melissa gets out on our campuses and starts to socialize these conversations more in depth about what the district can do to help expedite business or fiscal related processes. Thank you again for that question. The next question is, faculty and classified recently received a raise. What is the plan for management? The cost of living has affected all equally. I agree completely that inflation, the cost of living has been, it's affected all of us equitably. And by the way, equitably, not in a good way. So I would say that one of the things that we're looking at right now is the management salary schedule. I suspect there'll be movement on that in the very near future, very soon. Not at the November board meeting, but at a soon to be scheduled board meeting, I would say in the next probably couple months. I'm aware that's an issue. I 100% agree with the person who posed the question. It's absolutely an issue. We'll make sure and get that salary schedule revised. I'm working through it right now with the help of Human Resources, Vice Chancellor Ali. That will soon be on the board's agenda to approve, understanding as the person who posed the question already noted, that our classified positions and faculty positions did in fact receive a raise while our management have not as of today. Thank you for that question. The next question is, the colleges have too many administrators, managers, directors. What is being done to fix this issue, as some admin don't have enough work to indicate why they're needed? I would say from my perspective, we need to make sure that we have the right number of people in all positions to be performing the work that needs to be done to serve students. If we're hiring people that don't have enough to do, I think that's another issue. I would say this, moving forward, one of the things I mentioned at each town hall meeting, so this is going to be more repetitive to everyone listening, but I think it's worth repeating. One of the things that I mentioned was that over the next several months, I will be doing a significant deep dive into the system of HR. And what that means is looking at the kinds of software we use. As everybody who hires knows, we use NeoEd for many of our HR hiring functions. NeoEd is a third-party software that has a certain cost attributable to it. Are there opportunities to leverage some of the same type of modules in Banner? I'm not sure yet, but that's an example of the kind of granularity that I'm looking for. I suspect as we move this process forward that we might engage in a time and effort study and see exactly what positions are doing. I'm sorry, I don't know enough about every management position to know exactly what that person may or may not do. However, I'm certainly open to looking at it. And again, just ensuring equity, that we have the right people employed in the right positions across our 26,000 square mile service area. So thank you for that question. This question says, at your town hall, you shared that fiscal service CFO will be providing similar meetings at the colleges. Will this include a discussion on how to make sure fiscal reports are submitted on time and not prolonged by the fiscal review? Absolutely. So just a couple of seconds ago, I mentioned that I've asked Melissa as acting CFO to go out to our colleges and have the kind of open, honest conversations you've come to expect from me. I expect Melissa, Dr. Stacy Pfluger, our new Vice Chancellor for Educational Services and Student Success, to be doing the same things. Dr. Pfluger's already started that process. I believe tomorrow, both she and Melissa as CFO will be at Saracoso Community College. So my commitment is that our Vice Chancellors will be out, they'll be visible, they'll be engaged in honest, productive conversations with our constituents about fiscal reports, about the process of acquiring goods and services, about the processes of paying for goods and services in an expeditious manner. So the answer to the question is yes. The next question is, when can we expect hiring a BC Director of Financial Aid? That's a great question. Here's what I'll have to do. I will get back to you about that because I do not know the answer today. Obviously, that's an important position. As you all probably know, the changes with the U.S. Department of Ed and the free application for student aid, or FAFSA, have been crazy this past year. You probably heard the same kind of horror stories that I have about students trying to get FAFSA's processed. And again, this issue affects all institutions, large and small, Research One University through community colleges. So I will do some research about that question, as I have in other questions in the past. I'll get back to you this week about the answer to that question, but I apologize. I don't know the answer to that question today, but again, I will find out that information for you. The next question is, how about adjunct raises? I think that is a topic that we should look at. I am not aware, and again, I apologize, I'm not aware of the last time that we gave a raise per unit hour or per course for our adjuncts. Clearly, that's important. About 60 to 65% of our courses are taught by full-time faculty. So that means at any given time, we're looking for 35 plus to 40% adjuncts. So clearly, we could not make our business model work without competent, caring, and passionate adjunct faculty. So I will absolutely look at that. I'll do some research. I mentioned a few minutes ago about taking this kind of deep dive into HR and looking at everything about HR. Part of that is hiring adjuncts. How long does it take it to do it? Where are we having some gaps in hiring adjuncts, if we have any? What is adjunct pay? What has it been historically? What is adjunct pay in the current CCD compared to similarly sized districts in California? I think those are all things that we need to look at to ensure that we're being as competitive as possible for a smaller number of adjuncts that are out there. We want them to make sure that they know current CCD is the place to be for adjuncts. So I really appreciate that question. If there are any adjuncts listening or people who work with and hire adjuncts, thank you. We could not do the job that we do teaching students without a great, qualified, and passionate adjunct faculty. So thank you for that. The next question is, with the management salary, will the positions be taken into consideration? Our program manager and program directors are not being compensated correctly for all the hours they are taking on. I would encourage whoever made that comment, will you please send me a follow-up email? I know what you're talking about, but if I could have some more specificity, that would help me answer the question better. Clearly, we need to be sure that we're compensating people correctly for the work that they're doing. It always helps me to understand what someone who's engaged in a certain job is doing every day and what the commensurate pay may or may not look like. So if I could ask for some clarification, that would really help me in further codifying the response for you. Thank you so much. Are there any plans, the next question, are there any plans for other HR processes to be digital, such as absence reports? 100% yes. So as I've gone around and talked in our town hall meetings last week, one of the things I said to everybody was, we need to ensure that we're automating everything possible. However, with the caveat that we're not only automating, but we're using our student information system or Banner for the majority of that automation. In other words, we use dozens, if not maybe hundreds, of third-party softwares across the district. I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that we should unilaterally eliminate third-party software. What I'm suggesting is that we should be studying third-party software a little more closely to see how it happens, how it's approved. Are we using similar softwares throughout the district to gain the maximum kind of economy of scale? So I would say absolutely we need to be looking at automation, but to be clear, we need to be looking at how can we best automate within Banner. Remember, soon we will be migrating to Banner cloud version, or what's commonly known as SaaS, or software as a service. So the question is really going to become, what opportunities will we have in Banner SaaS that will allow us to further automate? So 100%, we should not be doing anything that is a paper-driven process. We need to look at how we can best modernize all business processes. But again, keeping in mind the majority of those we want to keep within the student information system or Banner. Thank you for that question. I, again, agree completely. The next question, somebody helped me a little bit here and said, adjuncts got a raise last year, $65, and this year it goes up again. However, the librarian counseling adjuncts are at 60. Will you support these adjuncts also receiving the same range? So just to reiterate the question, there was a comment about adjuncts getting raised to $65, and then this year $66. So it was 65, and then it went up to 66. And again, the person who posed the question said that librarian and counseling adjuncts are still at 60. I would say from my perspective as chancellor, I certainly would support conversations about these adjuncts also receiving the range. What I'm not aware of is any conversations that may have taken place in the past about why these positions weren't included in that. So again, if you can give me a little bit more background information about those positions, that would be helpful just to understand what the rationale was for counselors and librarians who serve in an adjunct role not receiving that year ago raise to $65, and then this year an extra dollar, which would bring them up to 66, as the person pointed out in the question. So if there's some additional information, please send that to me. The more background information I have about any problem, any challenge, any issue, the better I can help our colleges and you specifically as our team members resolving it. So yes, I would love to have some more background information about that. The next question I have here is, do we have a contract that holds us to American Fidelity? Their staff is very pushy on benefits and not extremely helpful. It's hard to make choices when we don't know how it's going to affect our paycheck. I will find out. I do not know about the term of the relationship with American Fidelity. I do know as an employee, they offer a suite of services that can be kind of overwhelming because there's about 8+ different choices when you look at life insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, et cetera, et cetera. These are all important things because we don't know when an accident can strike any of us, but it is a lot of information. So I'm not aware of what the contract may be, but again, I will find out and I will let everybody know. I'll also have a conversation with Vice Chancellor Ali about American Fidelity and pass along that to our partners at American Fidelity, that we need to make sure that we're engaged in appropriate customer care, that we're answering questions. Again, this can be really overwhelming when you're looking at life insurance. Should I buy whole? Should I buy term? Do I need disability insurance? Do I need long-term care insurance? I mean, there's just a whole lot out there that most of us, quite frankly, are not subject matter experts in. And so anything we can do to make that process more transparent, more obvious to the person, the employee making choices, absolutely agree. I'll be getting back to everyone. I'll follow up with an email once I get a little bit more information about that. But again, I think we're at the end of our time. If there was any questions that weren't answered, please let me know. You can reach out to Jennifer Surratt. You can reach out to Todd Costin, who manages this webinar. Just a couple seconds in closing. I want to especially thank Todd Costin for all of the work we do together putting these on. I want to thank Jennifer Surratt, Cecilia, our team at the district for helping me prepare and get ready. It takes a lot of us to ensure that I'm putting this on in a manner that's helpful to you, that answers your questions, that is authentic, transparent. I just want to thank the amazing team that we have here at the district office for helping with that. And so with everything else, I wish each of you a great rest of your week. I hope you have a fantastic time. And remember, tomorrow is election day. Please go vote and exercise your freedom to vote and choose leadership all the way from the national estate to the local level. Your voice matters, your vote matters even more. So please, everyone, get out there and vote. In the interim, have a great rest of your afternoon, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.